All right, we are recording this meeting for friends and families who cannot attend right now. So that information should have popped up on your screen. So we're going to go to our next slide and just remind us of our mission. Prospect Schools is a K-12 college prep community. So we are going all the way through high school, where excellent teachers prepare a diverse student body to have a positive impact on society and a lifelong passion for learning. During the time that students are in our K-12 community, they will be experiencing a lot of testing situations, and we want to set them up for success. We're going to share our agenda for this meeting, where what we're going to be doing is we will be talking about the New York State assessments coming up, what's on the test, what students will be asked to do, which is a little bit different between grades 3, 4, and 5. We'll share what the school's been doing, what you can do to prepare your child, and we will have an open question forum at the end. So let's get started with what assessments students are taking. So everybody in grades 3, 4, and 5 will be taking a test using the next generation standards for ELA and math. Fifth graders this year are taking a science test that used to happen in fourth grade. And one of the things that we'll touch on is that fifth graders will be taking their test on the computer. We're going to talk about how these tests are scored next. So all of the tests are scored on a 1 through 4 scale. 3 means that students are proficient in the standards for the grade. 4 means that they've exceeded the standards for the grade. 2 is that they are partially proficient or approaching, and a 1 is below proficient. This is very similar to the way that we grade on our report cards. Next up, we're going to talk about when students will be taking the assessments. So we've done a few practice tests in school. In January, we took a mock ELA exam using previously released passages from the state test so that students could figure out what it's like to take the test, and also for us to have a logistical review. We use that data to inform our teaching and adjust instruction for students. In early March, we took a math mock exam, which again serves the same purpose as the ELA. In April, which, my goodness, is next month, we will be taking the ELA state exam for grades 3, 4, and 5. That's April 11th and April 12th. It is a Thursday and Friday following a short break on Wednesday. There will be the math exam coming up a month later in May after our spring break. That's May 8th through 9th. And May 16th is the science exam for 5th grade only. These exams are scored by the state, so those scores are released to schools usually in the fall and shared with families through their New York City DOE schools account. For 3rd graders, this is the first year that students are taking state tests, and so it can be exciting and a little bit nervous for kids. We're going to go over what's on those tests for 3rd graders. So on the first day of testing, students have 4 passages. It's a balance between informational text, nonfiction, and fiction. They have 23 multiple choice questions, and they have 2 short response questions. The guidance from the state is that it takes 1 hour to about 70 minutes to complete. We add a little bit of extra time in our schedule, and the testing is untimed for students. So if they need longer, they do have that time. The second day, they only have 2 passages, which can be a mix of informational and fiction, and they have 6 multiple choice questions and 3 short response questions. So on average, the second day is expected to take a little bit longer, between 70 and 80 minutes. In recent years, the state has dropped the requirement for 3rd graders to write an essay. For writing, for 3, 4, and 5, all short response questions are scored on a 2-point scale. 2 points means that they have written a full and complete response that answers all parts of the prompt. A 1 point is partial credit, meaning that they've kind of got it, but they might be literal when they're required to make an inference. They might have a few mistakes. And a 0 point means that they don't address any requirements of the prompt, or it's indecipherable. Sometimes a student might get a 0 point response if they've just literally copied the text without answering the question. Here is an example of a short response that was shared on a previously released state test. So the question that was asked is, How does paragraph 3 connect to paragraph 4 of how we use glass? Use 2 details from the passage to support your response. So that requires the students to understand what the text is about, but also how the paragraphs are related. The response that got a 2 out of 2 credit is, it says how they make glass. One detail is they use sand. Another detail is they have to make it hot. This is how they're alike. The state scored this 2 out of 2 and deemed it a sufficient response because it answers the question and uses 2 details. Now, if we click the animation, we're going to see that at IES, we actually have higher standards for our students' writing and thinking. We're going to go to the next slide and show an example from a prospect school student where they're asked to compare 2 paragraphs. This example says paragraphs 7 and 5 are connected because they both talk about materials for making the quilt. I know this because in paragraph 5 and 7, it said, she raised her own flax, spun it, dyed it, and wove it into beautiful pieces of cloth. As you continue on to see this, you're going to notice that there is a topic sentence. Students are citing specific details from the text. They're concluding the paragraph. So we set expectations at IES in 3rd grade for quality paragraph writing that helps students be successful on the ELA state test. All right, we're going to take a look at a little bit more. Now we're looking at math. So like we said, for 3rd grade, they're doing multiple choice and short response, which is scored on a 2-point scale. In math, they again have 2 days. The first day is 25 multiple choice questions, which takes about an hour. And on the second day, they have 5 multiple choice questions, but 8 open response questions, which may require multiple steps. Let's take a look and see what those look like. So for the math, students in 3rd grade are expected to focus on 4 critical areas. And if you're a 4th or 5th grade family, this is the foundation of what your children are also working on. They need to develop an understanding of multiplication and division within 100. They are developing understanding of fractions, especially unit fractions with the numerator 1. And they're developing an understanding of the structure of rectangular arrays and areas, which also links to the multiplication and division. Finally, they're describing and analyzing 2-dimensional shapes in 3rd grade. So in 3rd grade, some of those questions are multiple choice, but some of them are constructed response. And like the ELA short response, these are 2-point questions where to get both points, students need to correctly answer the question and show their work. And this is where kids who rely on mental math often need a push that if they do not show their work, they will not receive full credit. So as you're working with your child, please make sure that they show their thinking, and show their thinking. So we're going to do a little game. At this time, you can use the chat for everybody. We have a few questions to see, does this get a 0, a 1, or a 2, and why? So we'll give you a moment to study the question. 3 classes are on a field trip at the zoo. The number of students in each class is listed below. Class A has 24 students. Class B has 23 students. Class C has 25 students. At the zoo, all the students are placed into 8 equal groups. How many students are in each group? This question requires students to show their work. The work shown is 25 plus 24 plus 23 equals 72. 72 divided by 8 equals 9. The total answer is, this is looking like it's 8,072 with an interesting place for the comma. All right, in the chat, 0, 1, 2, what would you give this answer? All right, Ms. Carroll, if you click that animation, we're going to reveal this would get 2 out of 2 points. So those friends in the chat who named that it was the correct answer and showed their work, they said the inclusion of 80 in the work is inconsequential. It's not a reference. It's got enough to show that they understood the task. Let's take a look at one more. So here we have a student who showed their addition for 25, 24, 23, and then they did 8 divided by 72. In the chat, what do you think you would give this response? Okay, this response is actually a 1. And so the student showed some partial understanding. We had to add those numbers up together to get the total, but there is a lot of work to be done on the division. We are going to, we have a few other examples if you would like to see them of different types of math questions. I'm going to do a quick poll in the chat and also scan some faces. If you would like to see more math questions, can you just put yes in the chat? If not, you can write move on. Oh, we just showed one. Okay. I'm seeing 1 yes in the chat. And if you are a 4th or 5th grade family, these may be helpful to think about the foundational work that your child. All right, have a few more. So Ms. Carroll already revealed this is a 2 out of 2 response. But again, to get 2 points, we need to answer the question correctly, and we also need to show or explain our work. I'll give folks 1 minute to just internalize this question, and then we'll move on to 2 others before we dive into 4th grade. All right, we're going to show 2 others quickly. So here's another example of a math question. It says, write a fraction that has a value greater than 3/8 using 3 as the numerator. Be sure to include what you know about fractions in your answer. And so this student wrote 3/5. The lower the number is the numerator it is. Ms. Carroll, if you reveal 3/5 is, has a numerator with a 3, so we were partially there. 3/5 is larger than 3/8. The explanation is not fully fleshed out. And so especially if you're talking with kids, even if you're doing cooking or reasoning about like, why is this one bigger? Why is this one smaller? We're looking for mathematical language. We're going to go into our final example, and then we will take a pause for 3rd grade parents before we go into 4 and 5. So this is, Ms. Carroll, our final example. Here we have the same question, and they said 3/10, it would have 7 unshaded and 3 shaded. If you understand children's work, you might understand that if they were drawing out 3/10, they could have 3 shaded parts out of 10, but this isn't using mathematical language to explain why that is greater than 3/8. 3/10 is also smaller than 3/8. All right, I'm going to take a pause. 3rd grade families, this is an overview of ELA and math. We will be talking at the end about how to support your child, but certainly getting an early bedtime, making sure that you're practicing iReady at home and working with us is super important. If there are any major 3rd grade questions, please put those in the chat now. Okay, I know not everybody's typing fingers are as fast as those are on the computer all day. If you have a 3rd grade specific question, please put it in the chat or direct it directly to Ms. Carroll. We're going to go on to do 4th and 5th grade. There will be some similarities to 3rd grade, and there will be a few things that are different. So we're going to talk about 4th grade, which again is taking the test at the same time. It is a paper-based test for 4th grade and 3rd grade. And just like 3rd grade, there are 2 days. For ELA, what you'll notice is different about fourth grade is that they have slightly more questions. And on day 2, they are required to write an essay. It is expected that fourth grade will take about an hour to above an hour for each day. These tests are untimed, and so we have budgeted time in the schedule. If you look at the next slide, we're going to see the short response rubric is similar for fourth grade as it is for third grade, with 2 being the highest number of points. And we have a few examples of short responses that fourth graders have been asked to write on previous state tests. So our first short response example is this one where it asks in paragraph 14, why did the authors say the wolf stepped gingerly? Provide 2 text-based details to support your answer. So this is a vocabulary question. A 2 out of 2 response would say, in paragraph 14, the authors say the wolf stepped gingerly because the wolf was scared or frightened about the water. The wolf is making sure that the water wasn't cold. In the text I read, after stepping gingerly into the water ripples. Also in the text I read, considering going after the deer, getting wet, or just forgetting about it. This means that the wolf was frightened to go in the water. So we can see here that the student clearly answered the question with a claim. They have evidence and explanation. There are a few spelling and grammar errors, but those are not counted in the short response. Fourth grade has an extended response as well, which is new from them from third grade. The good news is that our fourth graders have been practicing essay writing in all of their EL modules. The extended response is graded on a 4-point rubric, with 3 being proficient and 4 being exceeding standards. So in the extended response, they typically have had 2 texts where students need to make a claim about both of the texts. In order to get the full points, they need to address both texts in their response. They need to have at least 2 pieces of evidence. They need to organize their essay with transition words and phrases, and spelling and conventions need to make sure that they don't impact the readability, meaning that they can make a few errors in spelling or convention, but we need to be able to read it. The biggest thing to know for essays are a series of short responses. We're asking students to make a claim, this time about 2 texts, usually supporting with 1 paragraph about the first text, another about the second. Oftentimes it's compare contrast, so it could be a paragraph about how they're same, a paragraph about how they're different. The teachers have been doing this extensively in our core curriculum. We do have a slide with a sample extended response. I'm going to just give folks about 30 seconds to take a look at it. And if you would like to see it further, we can share this session later or share the session materials. You'll notice that this response, the sample is written as 1 long paragraph. We do teach our students to organize their thinking into separate paragraphs, but they will not be docked if they don't do that. We're going to move on to math. We will have time if folks want to take a look closer at this. So similar to third grade, math is 2 days. The first day is only multiple choice. The second day is multiple choice with 9 constructed response questions, some multi-step like some of the examples we saw, and it takes students a little bit longer to finish on average. For fourth grade, they are expected to build on the standards that were addressed in third grade. And the 3 critical areas are fluency of multi-digit multiplication and division strategies within 100, developing understanding of fractional equivalence with like denominators and multiplication of fractions by whole numbers, and understanding how geometric shapes can be analyzed and classified according to their properties. So they're thinking about perpendicular, parallel lines, angle measures, and symmetry. That is when the protractor comes out and kids are asked, if this is the angle, what is the missing angle or what is the missing side? We have a few examples of the constructed responses. Again, for math, it's a 2-point rubric for the constructed response. And we'll go over just just 3 examples of student work at the 4th grade level. If you're a 3rd grade parent, this is what your child is building up to. If you are a 5th grade parent, this is the foundation for the work your child needs to do this year. So this one says, a market ordered 140 apples packed in small bags. How many small bags can be filled? Will there be any apples left over? This is a standard in 4th grade about interpreting remainders. So the student shows their division. And there's also a part B. Let's take a look and see if this is a 0, a 1, or 2, and why. So this is a complete and correct response that demonstrates a thorough understanding of this standard. The work is fully shown. I will also note that the answer is labeled. It's not 23 and 20. It's 23 small bags with 2 apples left over. It's 20 large bags and none left over. So we know what we're talking about. We're talking about bags of apples. And we also have interpretation of the remainder. Our next example is a student who did similar work. Let's see the score. So this one is a 1 because the student made an error. So they did their division correctly in the first part, but incorrectly, they had an incorrect part, so they would get partial credit. And this often happens with students. So this is an area where showing their work in class allows our teachers to help pinpoint their errors and help them move past those. This is our last example of a student. This student said that there were 840 small bags of apples in the same problem and 1,620 large bags, which means that this student is not thinking about reasonability in their answers and unable to identify their error. So this answer would be scored as 0. They did not understand the math tasks involved. They used multiplication instead of division. And so one of the things that we promote when students are doing a problem is to first make sense. If I have 140 apples, it doesn't make sense that I would have 840 bags. That is just too many. So in order to help our kids prepare, we are making sure that our curriculum is fully aligned to New York standards, and especially making sure that the scope and sequence prioritizes the standards that are assessed on the annual assessments before those assessments. We have academic expectations that meet or exceed what students are expected to do on the state tests, but we don't replace our core curriculum with test prep. We do a little bit to support them in understanding the format, but we make sure that we have a solid curriculum day in and day out that is preparing them. We also frequently monitor student progress through exit tickets, quizzes, unit assessments, interim assessments, and mock exams. And we don't just sit them and put them in a folder, put them on report cards. We have our teachers respond to the needs of students based on the data and use our co-teaching model in order to adjust instructional groupings. The instructional leadership team, which is myself and Mrs. Lawrence for grades 3 through 5, as well as Ms. Carroll, work together to coach and support teachers to continuously improve their outcomes for students. So overall, we believe in just general good, robust teaching in order to support student outcomes. We are going to take a pause there because we are about to move on to 5th grade, which is computer-based testing. If you are a 3rd or 4th grade family and you cannot stay on and you have a deep, deep question, now is the time to put it in the chat or private chat it to Ms. Carroll. All right, Ms. Carroll will be answering private chats if you are a 3rd or 4th grade family. If you are a 5th grade family, we're about to talk about computer-based testing. If you're a 3rd or 4th grade family staying on, this is coming up for you in the future. So you might want to stay on for a little bit and see what we're talking about. All right, we are going to talk about 5th grade computer-based testing next. So this is new. We're excited. We've been practicing, but 5th grade will be taking their ELA state test on the computer this year. Similar to 3rd and 4th grade, it is a 2-day test. Like 4th grade, 5th grade has 1 essay question. We're going to show those in just a moment. So day 1 is like 4th grade and like 3rd grade, a mix of fiction and informational text. 26 multiple choice questions, and 2 short response questions. On day 2, 3 passages, 7 multiple choice, 3 short response, and 1 essay, which usually is, again, a compare and contrast essay. The thing that's different is that kids are typing these onto the computer. So whereas in 3rd and 4th grade, they are doing pencil paper for their short response, by 5th grade, they are doing it on the computer. The writing expectations for 5th grade shares the same short response rubric across 3, 4, and 5. It is a 2-point rubric. We have Ms. Carroll move the slide to show that. That 2-point rubric, to get both points, students need to have a full and complete response that includes a valid inference or claim. So they can't just say this happened. It actually has to be a claim or an inference. They have to show analysis of the text when required, and they need those facts and details that support their answer. It also needs to be a sufficient number of facts. So if it says give 2 pieces of evidence, which it will, then they need to have at least 2 facts or 2 quotes to get the full points. We have an example of a 5th grade short response from a previously released state test that got 2 out of 2. So in this, and I pretty much guarantee that this question is going to happen. It says, what is the main idea? In 3, 4, 5, everyone is going to have 1 short response, pretty much guaranteed, that says, what is the main idea of either a section or passage? Use 2 details to support the response. So students need to say, this is the important idea, but also give 2 pieces of evidence. This is a very, very typical short response question on the state test, which is why we encourage our students to read, not just to answer questions, but to make meaning. 5th grade has the same extended response rubric as 4th grade. And so that is a 4-point rubric. Our 5th graders will tell you that they have been writing essays since the moment they came in the building, and they've gotten a lot of great work on them, and they have also been using the computer to write their essays. We've got an example of a 5th grade essay response right here. And again, those essays are usually compare contrast, and we're looking for kids to give evidence from both pieces of the text. I'll give you just a moment to take a quick look at this sample response. Ms. Carroll, I think you should skip the next slide for the scoring, and we're going to go into 5th grade math. So 5th grade math, just like 3rd and 4th grade, is a 2-day test with a similar time frame, but it is on the computer. So on day 1, they have 30 multiple choice questions. And on day 2, they have 5 multiple choice questions and 9 constructed response questions. And we have been practicing through the Nextera exam portal, as well as our own internal Illuminate portal, how to answer a math question on the computer to show thinking. So we'll talk about the Nextera portal and how kids are practicing. But just like we talked about 3rd and 4th grade, the skills for math, for 5th grade, they are building on all the skills that they had in 3rd and 4th grade, those standards. And then there are a few critical areas that they're focusing on next. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about those areas. It's fluently adding and subtracting fractions, which could be fractions with unlike denominators, meaning that they have to rename or convert their fractions. Multiplying and dividing fractions with whole numbers. Multi-digit division with 2-digit divisors, or what some of us remember as long division growing up. They need to use all 4 operations with decimals to the hundredths place, and they need to calculate volume. So we have a few examples of 5th grade math from previous tests. These are different than the computer-based, but is the same thinking. Those open responses are a 2-point rubric, similar to short response and 3rd and 4th grade. So the next slide shows a question that was on a previously released state test for 5th grade to show the rigor. It says 16 students in a drama club want to attend a play. The ticket price is $35 for each student, and the transportation and meals for everyone will cost $960. To pay for the trip, The students designed sweatshirts to sell for a profit of $19 per sweatshirt. If each student sells the same number of sweatshirts, how many sweatshirts must each student sell so that there will be enough money to pay for the entire cost of the trip? Show your work. And so we have a few examples of students who've done this work. Our first example is a student who is showing quite a bit. And again, this is going to be translated to the computer this year. So we have been working with kids on how to show their work on the computer. This work right here would score 1 out of 2 points. And that's because the total money that needed for all students to attend the play and the total number of sweatshirts is correctly calculated, but the number of sweatshirts that need to be sold by one student is not determined. So a big part of this, there's a lot of work on that page. At first glance, it looks real good. Woohoo, they did a lot of math. But if you don't sufficiently answer the question, you don't get both of those points. So our 5th grade teachers have been working a lot with students to make sure, are you really investing in the question and finding what the question is asking you so you don't miss a step or do all of the work, but miss some of the thinking required. We have another example of student work on the next slide. This example of student work shows a student who used a partial product method for multiplication and division, and they answered 5 sweatshirts. If we see that score, this one, even though there's less work on the page, it's actually 2 out of 2 because they are showing their work and they are showing they're labeling their steps, but they're also answering the question for this one. Our final example shows a lot of work, but says 50 sweatshirts. And so this one would be scored 0 out of 2 points because there is a significant misunderstanding of what to do. There's also a reasonability issue that we do want students to think, is this answer reasonable? This year, 5th graders are also going to be taking a science exam in the spring. This used to be administered into 4th grade. It's been restructured. For the science exam, questions are organized in clusters that relate to the same topic. So each cluster of questions may have a mix of multiple choice and short response. Some questions are going to require students to use technology to respond, such as a drag and drop question or a question that requires graphing. And questions will be based on passages, data tables, diagrams, and other artifacts. So it's okay. I think our slides got a little jumbled. Yep. Okay, we moved forward in slides, but we will move back. So 5th grade, the main headlines, they are taking a science exam. On average, it's going to take about 90 minutes for students to complete, and we have blocked that out on this schedule. One thing you should know is that we are doing a lot of things to prepare, but we are not doing test prep all day long every day. So what we are doing to prepare for ELA, math, and science is making sure we have a curriculum aligned to our state tests. We are making sure that we have high, rigorous academic expectations for kids, that it's met through our core curriculum. We do a little bit of what we call data bursts to give kids some practice with the format of the test. For 3rd graders, making sure that if I'm on number 4, that my bubble is also a number 4, and for kids to just get familiar with it in the testing environment. But it's not very long. Our 5th graders are having a lot of computer-based practice so that we're able to do their unit assessments through the computer so they can practice that format. And our teachers are also doing some work to show them just the different features of the computer. So it's not their first time realizing like, oh, I can highlight or make the background color pink. We also continue to monitor student progress. We've got our teachers tracking data all the time and using it to adjust their instruction. And the leadership team is coaching and working with teachers. There are some things that you can do to help. I am going to share the first one, and then I'm going to pass on to Ms. Yunjun around the supports available online. But getting in the practice of doing homework helps you know what your child is doing in school and builds their stamina and independent tasks. Our computer-based iReady program is adapted to meet students' needs and support them. And for our fifth graders, also gives them a little bit of familiarity with computer-based testing. We want to really encourage perseverance. If you have family stories, if I worked really hard and I didn't get it the first time, but I persisted, that can be really helpful. We also want to make sure that we're praising the process and not just the answer. So we're not a culture where you are a score. We want to make sure that we're a culture that really emphasizes the growth mindset of kids working harder to get smarter. And we want students to really, really explain their thinking, whether it's math or literacy. So if you're reading a story, you're watching a movie, and your kid has a question or they have an idea, they say, oh man, that character is mean and nasty. Well, how do you know it? Prove it to me. What are 2 pieces of evidence that that's a nasty character, a mean character? Ms. Yunjun is going to talk about some of the web-based tools that we have for practice. This is not just for 5th grade, but for all grades. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Altop. I am Ms. Yun Zhang. I am Special Project Manager. And can you turn off? All right. I'm going to show you the Nextera, the site right here. This is a New York State testing program question sampler. You can use on your home and select a different subject, and you can select a grade from like grade 3rd, 4th, 5th. And there is a science as well. So science is for grade 5th. I'll just go to ELA and select grade 5 and going to sampler. And when you go and start the test, and you can also select accommodation if you want to, and it's going to loading the test. This is the exact same environment for the actual state testing, so they can practice how they're going to navigate and change their answer and how to drag it down in your house and on your convenience. So you can definitely get in the good benefit of having sample test from here. And then I will give you the Orbis Nest today. I also have a link to it, so you can actually get click that link to practice. You don't have to log in. Yeah. It's just the site that you can just go to Nextera, and you can practice a different subject in a different grade in any time. All right.
So teachers in 5th grade will be using Nextera to give kids a little bit of practice and showing them the different tools. You can get lost at the beginning with all the like, you can highlight this, you can highlight that, but really trying to make sure that kids are familiar with it. We also want to talk about ways that we want to show up for kids. We've fortunately had a really positive, productive testing environment this year in our practice tests, and we want to continue that. We want to be positive. Testing is a chance to show what you know. The kids have worked really hard and learned a lot, and this is an opportunity to show that. We also want kids to relax. Like, we want a healthy level of take this seriously, but they are not defined by their test scores. And they're going to imitate the way adults are being. If we are stressed out about their testing, they are going to be stressed out. If we are confident that they are going to show their best learning and do their best, and that trying their best is an experience that they should have, then they will be confident. We also want to make sure that kids are primed and ready on testing days, that they get a good night's sleep, early bedtime, no tech the night before, go to bed nice and early. We want kids to arrive at school on time or early so that they can have breakfast at school or eat a hearty breakfast before they come. And what we really don't want is a student coming in late and then having to test in a different environment from their class. If you have questions, your child's teacher is the first person you should reach out to about the skills that they're learning and their learning goals. We have report card conferences. Plug if you haven't come. We have more tonight. If you have a question about their homework, or if you have a question about their social emotional needs. If you have logistical, Oh, if you have logistical questions or questions about the assessments and how they're scored or designed, questions about the curriculum or oversight, you can come talk to me. I'm A. Altoff at prospectschools.org. If you kick the H out of Altoff, it will not get to me. You can also come to Ms. Lawrence, Lawrence at prospectschools.org, especially if you have a question about third grade. Finally, if you are feeling that you want to opt out of state testing, that is your right as a parent. But we ask that you have a conference with Ms. Carroll to discuss that and make sure you need to put that in writing. We want to let families know that on those testing days, because we need to meet the requirements of the state, we do not have an alternate place for students except to be in a lower grade classroom. If they stay home, that would count as a day out of school. We would be able to provide students with a lower grade classroom until their class is finished with testing. All right, we are now going to open it up to questions, and thank you. This is recorded, so we will share it with those who could not be here today. But if you are fine and good and you've got all the information you need, feel free to log off and we'll see you at pickup. If you would like to stay on for questions, this is a time where if you'd like to unmute and ask a question or ask a question in the chat, we are going to stay on for a few more minutes and be available for that.